It's February 6th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dan. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with a local court's ruling on Samsung chair Lee Jae-yong. The heir to the South Korean conglomerate was acquitted of stock manipulation and accounting fraud charges in connection with a controversial merger nearly a decade ago. Monday's court ruling supports Lee's long argument that the merger was normal business activity. According to the OECD latest projections, the global economy will grow by 2.9% in 2024. But the global agency lowered South Korea's expected growth, pointing to high interest rates as well as high inflation. Britain's King Charles III has been diagnosed with a form of cancer. While the type of cancer has not been publicly revealed, the 75-year-old king began regular treatments on Monday and will postpone public duties during the treatment. Samsung chair Lee Jae-yong has been found not guilty of financial crimes connected to a 2015 merger. Now, Monday's acquittal is a huge relief for Lee, who's faced legal issues for years. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
The Seoul Central District Court acquitted Samsung Electronics Executive Chairman Lee Jae-yong on Monday at his trial for alleged accounting fraud and violation of the law on capital markets several times. The court held its hearing on Lee at 2 p.m., 3 years and 5 months after the Samsung chief was indicted in connection with the 2015 fraud case. The main issue in the trial was whether the merger process between two Samsung affiliates in 2015 was conducted properly. In 2020, Lee was indicted on charges of manipulating stock prices in the 2015 merger of two Samsung affiliates, Samsung C&T and Chae Industries, in which 3 Samsung C&T shares were offered for 1 Chae share. There have been accusations that Samsung Group management may have intentionally lowered the value of Samsung C&T to help Lee gain control of the company, as he was the largest shareholder of Chae Industries. Last November, prosecutors demanded a 5-year prison sentence for Lee. They also requested a fine of 500 million Korean won, or around $375,000. Prosecutors say the manipulation caused losses for other investors and held Lee responsible for these. He also stands accused of involvement in suspected accounting fraud at Samsung Biologics, a subsidiary of Chae Industries. The court also delivered not guilty verdicts for 13 current and former employees of Samsung who were indicted along with Lee. It stated that there was no proof of the charges, adding that the prosecution failed to sufficiently prove that the merger was unlawfully conducted to bolster the chairman's control over the company. The Associated Press reported that the latest ruling by the court could alleviate the legal troubles surrounding the Samsung heir. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is likely to announce an increase in medical school enrollment quotas today. Medical worker associations are against the measure, and junior doctors are gearing up to participate in a strike. Our Shin Yeon tells us what to expect.
An announcement regarding an increase in annual admission quotas at medical schools is expected on Tuesday to tackle doctor shortages in areas outside the capital, as well as in essential medical areas. The plan for the increase is expected to be unveiled after a 2 p.m. meeting on medical workforce policies. If decided, it will be applied from 2025 and will be the first hike in 19 years, as the quota has remained unchanged at 3,058 per year since 2006. Last week, the government laid out its medical reform plan, where it projected a doctor shortage of 15,000 by 2035. The increase in capacity is expected to be more than an initial estimate of between 350 and 500, possibly exceeding 1,500 doctors next year. The Korean Association of Medical Colleges said that an increase of 350 students in the enrollment quota for next year would be appropriate. Ahead of the government's announcement, the Korean Medical Association, which opposes expansion, held an emergency meeting last night. According to a survey conducted by the Korean Intern Resident Association last month, 86% of the respondents expressed willingness to participate in a strike if there is an expansion. In response, the Ministry of Health and Welfare announced a strong countermeasure. It is reportedly set to issue immediate return-to-work orders if doctors go on strike. It's also considering disciplinary action for those who do not comply with the orders. 신예은, Arirang News.
It shouldn't be just parents, but the whole country who's responsible for childcare. That's what President Yoon said on Monday. To ease parental concerns, after-school childcare services will be expanded to all elementary schools. Kim Do-yeon reports.
The South Korean government is expanding childcare services with its public after-school program called Neulbom Schools. This as President Yoon hosted the 9th livelihood policy discussion with citizens on Monday, announcing that the program, which is currently in its test phase at 459 elementary schools, will be expanded to all elementary schools nationwide by the second semester.
Parents 케어에서 이제는 퍼블릭 케어, 즉 국가 돌봄으로 나아가야 합니다. 이 퍼블릭 케어를 정착시키려면 무엇보다 학교 역할이 확대되어야 합니다.
The program, which offers educational, arts, and sports activities to help with childcare, especially for households with working parents, started last year. The expansion will make all first-grade students eligible, moving beyond the current limited capacity and selection process. By 2026, it aims to include all elementary students. Additionally, schools will receive dedicated officials to oversee the program and help with the administrative side. It kills two birds with one stone when it comes to tackling the low birth rate. The cost of childcare and parents having to sacrifice their careers were two top reasons behind not having children, and the program tackles these. At the discussion were parents and teachers who touted the program, especially the fact that various arts and culture classes, such as ceramics, sports, and dancing, are offered too. Some suggestions were given too.
I believe the government has to allow specialized operation methods for the program depending on whether the area is rural or urban, and in the long term this will revitalize rural areas while children will enjoy the program more.
To this, President Yoon largely agreed. Referencing the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, he called on local experts in different industries to contribute to the program at schools around them.
이런 농촌형, 도시형 같은 지역 특색에 맞는 그런 교육 프로그램들을 다양하게 우리가 제공하고, 저도 그 재능 기부할 수 있는 게 있는지 한번 찾아보고 저도 한번 봉사활동을 하겠습니다. 감사합니다, 여러분. 고맙습니다.
President Yoon added that childcare itself is a part of education, especially for young children. And he wrapped up by saying that it's the government's duty to guarantee freedom for its citizens to be able to choose what they learn. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The OECD forecasts the global economy to expand by 2.9% this year. But it says South Korean economy will not grow as much as expected because of high inflation and high interest rate. Park Kwon-woo reports.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development revised its 2024 global economic growth projection upwards as it sharply increased its outlook for the United States. According to the OECD's latest interim economic outlook released on Monday, the global economy is expected to grow by 2.9% from an earlier estimated 2.7% made in November. However, the revised outlook is a slowdown compared to the 2023 annual growth of 3.1%, amid weakened growth momentum, continuous monetary tightening, and China's weak economic condition. The organization predicted the U.S. will continue its moderate 2.1% growth, a revision from its previous projection of 1.5%, due to weakening inflation and drops in interest rates. However, it said China's economy is expected to slow down due to its sluggish asset market and high debt, while keeping its growth projection of 4.7% made in November. As for South Korea, the OECD forecasts 2.2% growth this year, 0.1 percentage point lower than its previous projection in November. This year's figure is the same as that projected for 2024 by the government and the Korea Development Institute. Regarding inflation, the organization expects most countries to return to their targets by the end of 2025, as headline and core inflation rates gradually ease. The OECD kept its rate projection for South Korea this year at 2.7%. The organization pointed out the possibility of high inflation caused by geopolitical risks in the Middle East and debt burden caused by high interest rates as downward factors for the global economy. The OECD said countries need to be cautious with monetary policies and in securing fiscal soundness, along with making efforts to restore global supply chains and free trade throughout the year. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Taylor Swift once again stole the show at the Grammy Awards. Unfortunately, this year's edition was not a good one for K-pop or K-pop artists. We're joined by Professor Sider Bao this morning. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Taylor Swift made history yet again by becoming the first artist to win the prize for Album of the Year 4 times. Professor, does she deserve the honor?
Well, I think her fans believe that she does. She's really reached the hearts of people around the world, and she's undeniably a cultural titan, but I don't personally listen to her music. And considering that 4 of her competitors for Album of the Year were people of color, and it's been 25 years since a Black woman won Album of the Year, maybe it would have been more memorable and significant if a different nominee had won last night.
Well, it's not just Swift. Female artists also really proved themselves at this year's ceremony, from Miley Cyrus to Billie Eilish. What does it say about the music industry or trends nowadays?
I think basically there's a lot of exceptionally amazing female artists who are out there in the industry right now. And with this large number of women nominated and winning, I think it's going to encourage a new generation of young female artists.
Right, and that's also in line with the usual controversy of them being the so-called, all-white Grammys. How would you say it was this year?
Well, I really appreciated that Jay-Z talked at the Grammys about how the Academy still isn't getting it right.
Mm-hmm.
Women are recognized, but it just seems like the math, as he said, doesn't add up. And even though Trevor Noah was hosting again, and despite performances by non-white artists, it did not feel like we've left that white Grammy era behind. Personally, I thought seeing Tracy Chapman smile was the most memorable part of the entire broadcast, but that doesn't seem momentous enough to be the highlight of the biggest award show in music.
Definitely. Now, we have to talk about K-pop. Unfortunately, it didn't get any of the spotlight at this year's ceremony. What do you think happened?
Well, the Grammys have always been primarily about the USA and, to a certain extent, English language music produced with an emphasis on the US market. And K-pop is focused on outward expansion, and it does want the approval of the US market, but it's also looking at the rest of the world. K-pop hasn't lost itself chasing an American dream, and in many ways it's more global than the regionally focused artists at the Grammys. So BTS had this historic 5 nominations, and that was a great way for the Recording Academy to gesture at how up to the moment it was, and a way to court new audiences. But it also seems like the Academy may not be aware that other K-pop acts exist. And in 2023, the story in K-pop was about girl groups, New Jeans, Blackpink, IVE, all these amazing groups that have been so dominant in K-pop. And it seems like in the best pop duo or group category, the Recording Academy usually nominates a solo artist with a featuring artist. And they really like people who write their own songs. And it just seems like K-pop somehow doesn't fit the Recording Academy model for a reward in this category.
Right, it does look like they do have their own qualifications when honoring those artists, especially within the U.S. But can we be hopeful that the next edition hopefully be a better one for K-pop and K-pop artists?
Well, I hope so. Korea has many world-class artists. If Boy Genius can win an award for alternative music, there's no reason why Hyeko couldn't be nominated for the same category. Korea has and continues to produce music of a caliber equivalent to what is honored at the Grammys. Will it happen? Could Hyeko take home a Grammy in 2025? I personally would like to see Asian and Korean representation as part of the televised section of the Grammys. But for that to happen, the Recording Academy and the U.S. listening public needs to shift to be less parochial and more global in their orientation.
Indeed, indeed. All right, Professor Seiji, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have a great day.
You too.
Britain's King Charles III has been diagnosed with cancer. Now, the type of cancer is not yet known, but the king will take a break from public-facing duties. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Buckingham Palace said Monday that King Charles III had been diagnosed with cancer. The palace said that the medical tests revealed a form of cancer, but did not clarify what type of cancer King Charles was diagnosed with. However, royal officials said that the form of cancer detected was not prostate cancer. The remarks come after the 75-year-old monarch went to a London hospital for a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate last month, leading to prostate cancer speculation. With Charles beginning treatment, he will take a break from his public-facing duties, as recommended by doctors, but will continue his official state duties. Other senior royals, including Queen Camilla and Prince William, will reportedly cover public engagements. Meanwhile, Prince Harry will travel to London to be at his father's side in the coming days. The Duke of Sussex's last appearance at a royal occasion took place in May during the coronation of King Charles. Harry moved to the U.S. with his wife Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, after they stepped back as senior royals in 2020. Since then, his relationship with some other royals has been strained. World leaders have expressed concerns over the cancer diagnosis, including U.S. President Joe Biden, who said he would be speaking with him soon after hearing of his diagnosis. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Thank you.
Washington on Monday highlighted its focus on close trilateral security coordination with Washington and Tokyo, and called Pyongyang's recent cruise missile launches deeply destabilizing. According to U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel during a press briefing, actions by North Korea also contributed to greater risk in the Indo-Pacific region, adding Washington will closely coordinate with its Asian allies. The comments come as the North has conducted 4 rounds of cruise missile launches this year, including a new type of nuclear-capable cruise missile. In a separate press briefing, Pentagon Press Secretary Patrick Ryder stressed the excellent relationship between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo, vowing to jointly confront evolving North Korean threats.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in the U.S., where California authorities are carrying out emergency rescue operations after a severe winter storm hit the area, causing substantial damage. NBC reports that at least 3 people have died in fallen tree accidents, and more than 415,000 homes and businesses are without power. What's called an atmospheric river hung over Southern California, with Los Angeles recording its rainiest day ever. Surrounding areas were also hit with heavy rain, near hurricane winds, with flash floods and landslides. The National Weather Service said on Monday that some 40 million were under flood, winter storm and high wind advisories, and that 10.4 centimeters of rain fell in downtown LA, breaking the record of 6.35 centimeters set in 1927. Now in tech news, the owner of Nasdaq-listed search engine company Yandex NV, often referred to as Russia's Google, struck a $5.2 billion cash and share deal on Monday to sell all its assets and operations in Russia to a consortium of investors. This solidifies Russia's grip on Yandex, which is owned by a Dutch parent company, as the Kremlin has been attempting to break it away from Western investors. The decision comes as the result of some 18 months of negotiations between the Kremlin and Yandex. Although Yandex's market capitalization was around $10.2 billion, the Russian government's mandatory demand of a discount of at least 50% to fair value involving foreign asset sales brought down the final price to half of its value. In 2021, before Russia invaded Ukraine, Yandex was valued at around $30 billion. Over to Pakistan now, where on Monday at least 10 police officers were killed and 6 injured in a pre-dawn attack by armed militants on a police station in Dera Ismail Khan, near the border with Afghanistan. The militants began the attack with sniper fire at around 3 a.m. local time, before entering the building armed with guns, grenades and rockets. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, Pakistan has seen a resurgence of attacks by Islamist militants since 2022, when a ceasefire agreement between Pakistani Taliban and the government ended. 2 months ago, a suicide bomber detonated a vehicle filled with explosives outside a police station in the same district, killing at least 23 and wounding 32. Now to El Salvador, where President Nayib Bukele won re-election on Sunday after securing a victory by a large margin. 42-year-old President Bukele has been credited with driving down El Salvador's gang violence, including the country's murder rate. Since coming to power in 2019, Bukele has transformed El Salvador from one of the most violent countries in the world to one of the safest in Latin America. His Nuevas Ideas party won at least 58 out of 60 seats in the National Assembly. Despite domestic popularity, Bukele remains a controversial figure for potential human rights violation related to anti-gang arrests.
Hello, I'm Lee Jae-yong with the latest weather updates. On and off snow and rain continued all day yesterday in the capital, and parts of Gangwon-do province, including Gangneung and Hongcheon, saw massive snowfall of more than 30 centimeters. Please stay safe on the road. Well, most of the snow has let up except in some southern areas and mountainous regions on Jeju, with more snow in the forecast for today. Starting off the day, 1 to 7 degrees lower than yesterday in most parts, and highs should go up to similar to Monday, hovering slightly above season norms. Seoul sees a high of 5 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Then Wednesday looks to be chillier but sunnier than today. Checking on today's highs for other regions, Daegu and Gwangju see highs of 7 degrees, Busan, Jeju topping out at 9 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Mostly cloudy skies are in store for most places today. Promising weather is on tap for the Seollal holiday weekend under much brighter skies nationwide, so the weather will not affect your travel plans. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
we're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's February 6th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Park Gi-hoon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Oxford University has decided to start a 10-week course introducing students to Korean culture and language. The English University launched an opening ceremony to welcome the first Hallyu Academy in the country. Around 20 students attended the event and said they signed up because they wanted to watch K-dramas without subtitles and were very interested in K-culture and content. The Hallyu Academy will hold online classes every other Saturday for 2 hours, teaching certain intricacies of the Korean language and introducing key historical and modern figures. An Indonesian researcher has been accused of leaking data related to its co-developed supersonic fighter jet with Korea dubbed Porame, also known as the KF-21. This individual was reportedly one of the longest working researchers among the Indonesian development team dispatched to South Korea. The Defense Acquisition Program Administration reported that on January 17th, this technician was caught trying to take out several unauthorized USB drives, including extensive development data. While investigations are still underway, the researcher has denied all the allegations. The KF-21 is a large-scale development program that costs over $5.9 billion, while Indonesia agreed in 2016 to bear around $1 billion worth of development costs, it still hasn't paid about $749 million. Moving on to our last story. Persians on Sunday decided to triple parking costs for SUV drivers, all part of Socialist Mayor Anne Hidalgo's plans to make the host city for this year's Olympic Games a greener and friendlier site for pedestrians and cyclists. More than 54% of the votes cast in the low turnout election supported this measure. Now it will cost around $20 for SUV drivers to park per hour in the city's center. Now, France has long been considered a country of car lovers, home to Renault, Citroën, and Peugeot, but Persian Mayor Hidalgo has long tried to make the city less car-friendly. Motor vehicles have been barred entirely from some roads, most notably a River Seine embankment. Bike lanes have also been added in. Now a third of all Persians don't even have a car, and Paris City Hall says that car traffic has come down by half since the end of the 1990s. But SUVs have been denting the progress and fouling air quality. City Hall also said SUV collisions with pedestrians were proven to be twice as deadly than accidents involving smaller cars. Now, here in the studio, what did you guys think about this measure? And do you think it will be effective in achieving France's goal of becoming less car-friendly and bringing air pollution down? And would it work here in Seoul?
You know, firstly, it's great to see Paris's efforts to tackle climate change leading to the Summer Olympics, and I'm in full support for making the world much greener and sustainable, not just for our generation, but for our future generations as well. However, tripling the parking costs for SUV drivers doesn't seem like the best option right now, personally. Perhaps providing subsidies for SUV drivers to maybe change their cars to smaller ones to, better protect the climate could be an option. But on the other hand, talking about Seoul, I'm not quite sure this may work in Seoul, as we see so many cars on the streets right now. And despite the government's efforts to encourage more people to change their diesel-powered cars into EV, electronic vehicles, to reduce air pollution, the lack of infrastructure in terms of charging stations hasn't helped with their goals. But all in all, I just want to see clearer skies in Seoul and with less fine dust, and not just wear a mask in general.
Exactly. In one sense, I am for this type of measure being implemented in Seoul, because sometimes hawkish measures might bring about change. But then here in Seoul, we've recently seen the climate change cards, where on public transport we get massive discounts so that we don't use our individual cars and ride public transport. But I do think we need stronger measures in order to see bluer skies. What are your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, so I know that South Korea is trying to make, Seoul greener by at least 2030 by changing a lot of public transport buses into electric buses, and therefore also asking people to go to hybrid to electric as well, which is a great move towards a greener society. But I personally don't see us going from cars to bikes anytime soon. Though we have public bikes for use, you'll see them only in the flatter areas of Seoul, and Seoul is actually quite a hilly city when you actually think about it, and it's not going to be great for people who live in those areas. And not only that, a lot of people now these days live outside of Seoul. So to ride a bike from outside from the Gyeonggi province into Seoul would be taking too long, and people are tired already. So I personally don't see this bike system working here in Seoul.
And also not only bike systems, but the parking system. Even if we triple the parking fee, I do think Korea has a bigger issue, which is illegal parking. There's so much illegal parking everywhere. I'm not sure if this would actually really stop people from riding SUVs. We need more regulations on that front. But one thing is for sure, we need to find a solution to better tackle air pollution and really bring about change for climate change. But in the meantime, let's switch gears to our main discussion topic. Today, we're going to be talking about a habit on the road that's illegal, but sadly quite common, which is causing a lot of safety hazards. It's using phones while driving. So Walter, why don't you start us off by showing us some figures that point to how common people use their mobile phones while driving on the road?
Yeah, sure. So if we actually take a look at the screen, I'll be able to show you just how common it is. Though most of us know that it is illegal to be using a smartphone while driving, it still hasn't stopped us from doing so. So 90% of people surveyed know that it is dangerous, which I don't understand what the other 10% are thinking, but 49.3% admit to having used their smartphone while driving. However, I would say that many people might not have been so honest on this survey. With the survey, I think a lot of people might have used their smartphone while driving. I can imagine even 50% more of people using their smartphone while driving. I at least know one of the three panelists here has done it many times, but we won't name who. But yes, I would definitely say that a lot of people know it's dangerous, but still continue to do it.
I think it also has to do with media portraying this. We've seen many media content or creators use their phones on the road, right, Yoon?
Absolutely. This driving behavior isn't only common among just people in general like us, but also to celebrities, influencers and content creators who I guess have relatively a bigger influence on society. And a celebrity who appeared on a variety show was aired using his smartphone while driving, like you see on the screen. And it caused a lot of controversy and a lot of discomfort to the viewers. This clearly showed the media's lack of awareness and insensitivity.
Insensitivity.
Insensitivity. Yeah. Thank you, Grace. To how dangerous it is to do something else behind the wheel. And not only on television, many streamers uploaded videos of themselves, using their smartphones while driving. And it kind of showed that it is okay to do so, despite it being illegal. And this definitely is something that is overlooked, especially here in South Korea. So I think there needs to be stricter guidelines and more enforcement under the road safety law.
Exactly. And though our generation might be considered the thumb generation, where we always have our phones by our side, I do think that we are aware that this does cause a lot of safety hazards. So my last question for you during our part of our discussion is, what does our generation think about using phones while driving?
Well, you say that we're the thumb generation, that's true, and we know that it's dangerous, but it does actually come down to lack of information as well. As I mentioned in my statistics, we do understand that it is dangerous, but there are still around 50% of people who are still doing it. But the MZ generation being the smartphone generation, I say, they are more attached to their phones, therefore making it more enticing to use their phones more often. And obviously now with applications such as social media, texting, etc., we're more enticed to actually use our phones while driving. Some are unaware of actually that there are punishments that come with looking at your phone while driving. So it comes down to lack of information and someone actually teaching them that they shouldn't do it as well.
I know, even though it seems like common sense, because no one actively tells you it's illegal, it's something that you can get penalized for, I do think that our generation has a relatively low awareness as to what we can be consequenced by. What about you, Kyun? What do you think our generation, including yourself, thinks about this phenomenon?
Using smartphones while driving extends to pedestrians on their phones while crossing the streets. I've seen so many people, many of them who look relatively young, walk around like zombies or smombi, as we call it in Korean. It's a combination of smartphone and zombies. And I had many incidents where they were so close to, just bumping into me. If I had been doing the same thing, I would have probably headbutted each other. We would have probably headbutted each other, and God knows what would have happened next. And even when I'm driving, stopped at the lights, I see so many pedestrians just face down on their phones. And some of them even have headphones on, so they can't even hear or see where they're going, which makes it even more dangerous. And I have been, honestly, a culprit myself back in the day, walking around with looking at my phone. And I know, obviously, it's not the safest way to cross the road. And so, nowadays, I would always refrain myself from actually, holding onto a phone and just putting it in my pocket while I'm actually walking around, or, of course, when I'm driving as well. And I just hope that this kind of seriousness, this kind of behavior is very serious, and that we all actually kind of get more information and educate ourselves before we actually get into a big accident.
Exactly, and car companies are well aware that a lot of drivers are on their phones, which is why we're seeing a lot of hands-free functions. But as you mentioned, on the pedestrian side, we always think that the driver wouldn't be on their phone. We'd be like, okay, they would swerve around us and we wouldn't be hit, but it's actually not the case. And that's why we're now going to include an expert who can tell us more about the dangers using our phone on the road poses. Stay tuned for a live interview. We're now going to include an invited professor from KAIST GCC. It's Moon Young-jun. Dr. Moon was the former chief director of the Department of National Transport Technology R&D in the Korea Transport Institute. He also has a doctoral degree of transportation engineering. So welcome, Professor Moon.
Hi, how are you?
All right, Professor Moon, we've just been talking about the phenomena of our generation often using phones on the road, but could you tell us exactly how dangerous this is?
Yes, we have no doubt or no surprise that there are many dangers of using mobile phone while driving, as you already discussed before. And this is because using mobile phone requires attention from your eyes, brain, and your hands, which come up with a loss of your senses. Some of the major dangers of using mobile phones while driving may include some of the three factors. We have the decreased perception and reaction time, which is one of the most important factor for keeping your safety on driving. And the second one is reduced awareness of surroundings. And the third one is comprised judgment of distance and road conditions. So some research, they also demonstrate that a person using their mobile phone while driving quadruples their probability of a collision. This is not only the frightening statistics for the driver, but also for pedestrians and other drivers that actively comply with some road and traffic laws and the regulations.
Right. And are there any figures or stats that show how many deaths or accidents occur through this phenomenon?
Oh, yes. According to the report from the Road Safety Authority in 2022, as a result of a traffic accident, there have been more than 2,700 road deaths, among over 280,000 injuries caused by approximately 200,000 number of accidents in Korea in the 2022. Then an academic survey shows it is expected in general more than 90% of the accident could be reported by the human errors. Okay? So among those statistics, it's not fixed yet, but approximately 30% could be caused by the using mobile phone while driving, which come up with in a case over almost 55,000 accidents among 200,000 total numbers, which is a really frightening the statistics. This number is a little bit some staggering, but anyway, there is the consensus with all of us. We can contribute to the lessening the dangers using mobile phone while driving. Typically, for younger generation.
Yeah, they are worrying numbers indeed, Mr. Moon. How does South Korea penalize, regulate this? Compared to other parts of the world, do you think South Korea has strong regulations?
Yes, the using mobile phone while driving is, yes, definitely illegal across all the cities and provinces in Korea, and this is strictly enforced. If you are caught using mobile phone while driving, you can be sure you will be caught with a fine, okay? No matter where you are. But the amount of fine is only 70,000 or 80,000 won with 50 penalty point, with demerit point, which is not the hefty, but just merely small. I believe comparing the other countries, I've already known, for example, in LA, USA, you have to pay more than $230 including some taxes, okay, based on the fine is only the $160. In Australia, for example, in Sydney, Queensland, the fine is about, I heard, the 1,000 Australian dollar with some the demerit points too. So I strongly recommend, the government should make our fine system more than triple or quadruple, or some much more than as it is now in Korea. This I believe this arose people's consciousness or attention to how to save the people killed on road caused by the human errors using mobile phone whilst driving.
Exactly. If we see more aggressive measures on this front, hopefully people's awareness towards how dangerous this phenomenon could be to not only themselves but to other pedestrians will be erased. Thank you so much, Professor Moon. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
All right. And as Professor Moon mentioned, hopefully we'll see South Korea implement stronger measures to prevent any accidents or deaths from using phones while driving. So how are other parts of the world trying to stop people from doing such? Like, for instance, in Australia, where you guys are from, and as the professor mentioned, there seems to be way stronger measures as to stopping people from using their phones on the road. Would you like to elaborate on this?
Yeah, Australia in general has a lot stronger regulations when it comes to any sort of illegal activity on the road. They enforce very harsh fines plus demerit points. Now, they've gone through the remarkable effort to stop people looking at their phones by installing highway cameras that actually look down onto you and sense whether you have both hands on the wheel or if there is a phone within your hand. Now, as the professor said, that there is approximately a $1,000 fine for that, and that's obviously very different compared to here in South Korea, which is about 65 Australian US dollars. I think it's about $1,116 actually to be approximate. But yes, there's obviously a lot more strong regulations, and therefore we are seeing a lot less people using their phones or instead using wireless connections or things like that.
Devices.
Yeah, hands-free connections as well. So this is something that I think we should do in Korea, is by upping the fines, to be honest with you. But, there are many other ways as well.
Upping the fines and strengthening regulations, because as of now, compared to Australia, it definitely seems like it's a slap on the wrist. Kyun, would you like to add on?
Yes, I would like to share an interesting story about my cousin who lives in Queensland, the capital, Brisbane actually, the capital of Queensland, Australia, where Walter is from as well. We had a conversation about how different the lifestyles were from Korea to Australia, and how I kind of missed the relaxing, kind of laid back and not so competitive livelihoods of Australia. And surprisingly, she mentioned how much fine she had to pay recently. And I was like, what kind of fines? And she said she had to, most of her earnings were used up paying those fines from driving. I was like,
really?
What kind of fines? And she told me that she had been caught, being on the phone, and just like what Walter said, there are highway cameras who track you down on the spot. So she had to pay so much fine, even though, she was aware and cautious of, I should not not touch my phone. Her bad driving habits got the better of her. So I was thinking, wow, Australia have really strict measures on the these kind of things. Just like the high-priced cigarettes, and that obviously had positive effects, bringing down the smoking rate. And I think, Australia and many other countries in Europe as well, they are on the right track when they impose strong measures, and like people abide to these laws because you don't want to end up paying most of your earnings on fines. So I think Korea should also head in this direction as well.
And sometimes I think even though we're living in a democratic society and we are living in a free and open society, there sometimes need to be strict regulations because it's habits like this that you can do easily at hand that not only cost your life but others, which is where regulations are needed. And that's exactly why we asked our viewers to share their own ideas to stop people from using their phones on the road. If you take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of our users had to share and give us our ideas as to how to stop this. Terrace Bell said, in my freshman year of college, as part of a program to stop distracted driving, we partnered with a local funeral home and staged mock funerals for a few people and friends who were using their phones while driving. Leon said, perhaps create some social media challenges that promote safe driving habits, encourage users to share stories, tips, and pledges to avoid using phones while driving, creating a positive peer pressure effect. Power Ranger said the best way to avoid your phone while driving is to leave your phone alone even if you're using Bluetooth, as long as it's hands-free and not causing any distracted driving habits or causing accidents. So what about you guys? I would like to hear your own innovative ideas or suggestions as to stopping this phenomenon from happening again, starting with you, Walter.
Yeah, for me, I try to keep my phone out of sight, out of mind. So what I usually do, to be honest with you, is I turn on my GPS, and that is, even though it's on, it's focusing on me on the road rather than actually what's going through and what's happening. And I'm not looking down, I'm looking basically eye level with the window. So other than that, if I don't need to use the GPS, I will either put it in my back pocket or put it in my glove compartment, just so I don't play around with it. Listen, I can't lie to you and say I haven't used my smartphone while driving. I have, but definitely when it comes to driving close, especially in Seoul when we're so compact, it should be something that you should avoid completely.
At all times. What about you, Yoon?
Along with the continuing development of technology in autonomous driving, perhaps implementing automatic phone lock while driving could be one way to prevent drivers from touching their phones. Smartphones nowadays can be connected to any kind of electronic devices, including our cars as well. So obviously, if we can come up with a separate driving mode function application that only works while the car has fully stopped,
that's a good idea.
Could really, improve our driving behaviors and obviously, in the end, reduce the number of road accidents.
Because at the end of the day, it's about life and death.
It is.
And hopefully today's episode could facilitate positive peer pressure in the sense that we're encouraging not using phones on the road no matter what. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Park Ki-hoon.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
Welcome